Hello and welcome to the Public Affairs program here at Catamount Radio. We call it Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore and host the show each week. We'll be speaking with community leaders from the business, professional, nonprofit, and political arenas. And the goal of the program is to inform and make our listeners aware of things that are going on not just in Rutland County, but throughout the state, things that will affect everyone listening in some cases, maybe a new law or regulation that goes into effect. Our show is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair in Rutland since 1846, and we're looking forward to the 178th Fair coming up August 13th through 17th, 2024. And we'd like to welcome into the program today, I'll do ladies first, Pattie McCoy, who is the minority leader in the Vermont House of Representatives, and also a member of the Transportation Committee, and Bill Canfield, who is representing Fairhaven and is on the House Ways and Means Committee and has a little longer service than Pattie, but that's okay too. We've had a bunch of other legislators in, and normally what I like to do is to let the audience know a little bit more about each of you. So, Pattie, we can start with you. How did you ever get involved in politics? What made you do that? How long you've been doing it? We mentioned you're on the Transportation Committee and also minority leader in the House. Were there things that surprised you about the way this process works in Montpelier, or did you pretty much have a pretty good idea? I know you come from a good background at municipal level with being a town clerk for years, but welcome in.
Thank you. So getting involved in this, I actually started working for a law firm in Poultney. I was a paralegal for them. So I would go around to the various town offices to search title for real estate transactions that the attorneys I worked for represented the clients for. And I spent quite a bit of time in the town office of Poultney, and the former town clerk prior to me was getting ready to retire. She called me up, asked me if I wanted to run. The town manager called me up, asked me if I wanted to run. So that's how I actually got involved in the municipality political sphere. Was the town clerk, the town treasurer, the Poultney School District treasurer, and the Rutland Supervisory Union treasurer for 26 years. In that time, I saw a lot of things that happened, a lot of unfunded mandates coming down from Montpelier. And I just, after the former representative prior to me, Representative Andy Donahue, decided not to run again, I put my feet into the waters. Yeah. So I knew a little bit about how Montpelier kind of functioned, but you never know until you get into it. What I found refreshing, I think, that you don't see at the national level is I think we have much more civility in our House and Senate than what people see on a daily basis in what happens in Washington, which is refreshing because we can disagree, we can agree to disagree and then go out for dinner with someone from the opposite party, which makes me feel good about what we try to do there. As you said, I am the House Minority Leader, so in the minority, we really don't have a lot of say. One of the former speakers said that their job is to steer the ship. Our job is to point out the rocks. So we point out a lot of rocks lately, I believe. So it is, I enjoy my role as the minority leader. I have a pretty good working relationship with leadership, the speaker and the Democratic majority leader. And we try to, do the best we can with what we have.
Now, on the House side, it's the speaker that decides committee assignments. The Senate functions a little differently. We have what's called a really strange term, the Committee on Committees. which is comprised of 3 people: the lieutenant governor, the pro tem, and then a member of the Senate, which is an elected position, and they serve for each biennium. So did you go right on transportation, or did you have another committee first?
No, what happens in the House side, prior to getting there in January, the Speaker will send out, give us your top 5, list your top 5 committees that you'd like to serve on. Coming from municipalities, I just wrote GovOps, 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 GovOps. And my first term here, I was put on human services, as far away from government operations as you could possibly get. I learned a tremendous amount in that committee, things that I never knew. That's a very difficult committee. As you know, almost 50% of our general fund monies go to human services for this state, which is a large sum of money. So a lot of stuff happens in that committee. The next term I didn't want to stay on that committee, and I was put on commerce and economic development, which I found that fascinating as well. It's the first time I heard about captive insurance was there. So then after that, I asked to be on transportation and have been there since. And this is I believe I came in with you. This is my 10th year.
Yeah. So terms. 4 years somewhere else, and then the last 6 on transportation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's turn to Bill Canfield, a very, very well-known name in that area over in Fairhaven. And you also have Benson and
West Haven.
So you have a little bit longer experience there, Bill. And how did you first come into this?
Well, as a child, my dad was involved countywide in Rutland. And I guess I learned a lot there, politics and campaigning and all that kind of stuff. And then after high school, I served 4 years in the U.S. Navy. And when I got out, I opened my shop in Harehaven, and converse, of course, with a lot of customers. And over the years, it's been, what's going on in Montpelier, and wait a minute, where's our reps? How are they voting on this stuff?
Yeah.
So, one thing led to another. My nephew graduated from UVM in 92 and ran, and he unseated an incumbent Republican. And I got very involved with that campaign as an adult. So I kind of got the bug right then, I guess.
So how many years for you?
This is my 10th term. This is my 20th year.
20th year. Wow.
Yeah.
And I know you're on Ways and Means now, but was that your original assignment?
No, it wasn't. As Patty mentioned, the list that the speaker sends you, I think I did put Ways and Means on there as my number one. Of course,
Nobody gets what they want.
Yeah, right. So I landed on natural resources and energy. And that was right when they put energy in with natural resources. And I was immediately involved with the Vermont Yankee.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a very fascinating committee. We orchestrated and as an agreement to allow them to use the dry cask storage for their spent fuel rods on premises, we established the Clean Energy Development Fund from that. So a lot has evolved since then. So, I spent 10 years on that committee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And Tony Klein was the chairman at the end of that, and he called me and said there was an opening for a strong Republican on the Ways and Means Committee, and that he recommended me to the speaker. And you don't get those offers like that. That's a powerful committee.
Yes, it is.
So, So I jumped, and
You serve as vice chair.
I'm vice chair now. Yeah.
So for those that don't know, and we'll try to explain as we go. By the way, we're recording this on the 14th of April, and it airs on the 21st. So when we get deeper into some of the bills that we'll be talking about, some of that could already have happened in terms of passage by the time that you folks hear the show. Some of them may not, but I just want to make that clear that we are recording this ahead of time on the 14th. So to get back to Billy's point, the Ways and Means Committee in the House is in charge of taxation. So they're the ones that decide how revenue will be raised by taxing and assessing fees On the Senate side, it's called the Senate Finance Committee, but in essence, the two committees basically do the same thing. It's I believe, a 7-member committee on the Senate side, and I'm not sure, is it 11 on the House side or 12?
It's 12 this year.
12, okay. So they're the people, again, that decide where we're going to get our revenue to run the programs and the system that we come up with. And so, yeah, 20 years, that's amazing. Were you surprised when you first got in there? It sounds like you kind of already had an idea of what really goes on.
Yeah, I did have an idea, and I didn't come in blindly thinking I could make change immediately. And my approach was eyes and ears open, mouth shut for a while.
Yeah.
So
that's good advice. That's the exact same advice that Senator Flory and Senator Mullen gave me when I decided to run, that the best thing to do is to just sit in your chair and listen, and don't assume that you know everything, because you probably don't. I was amazed at how sort of, I don't want to say laid back in a bad way, but you have the sort of image of government, and it's kind of a stuffy old place, and I was amazed at kind of how laid back things are. And I agree with Representative McCoy. We do get along with, and there are, I guess, to be fair, 3 parties we're talking about: the Democrats, Progressives, and Republicans. And the Dems and the Progressives have sort of come together as one party, if you will, and they are the majority. They are, in fact, a super majority, and they have, I can't do the math in my head that quickly, but 100 and some odd members in the House. There's 150 in the House, and I think the Republicans have 37 or 38. And in the Senate, it's equally the other way, where there's 30 senators, and we have 7 Republicans, and the remaining 23 are either Democrats or progressives. So they really are able to drive the bus, so to speak, and whatever they want to get accomplished, they usually can do that, absent a governor's veto, which has happened. And in fact, this year we sustained, well, we didn't sustain 2 of them. We sustained 1 of them, and the other one was sent back to the committee last week, the so-called S18 bill, the one that would have banned the flavored vapes and the tobacco products, the menthol cigarettes. So there was never a vote on the veto. It just simply was sent back to the committee, where it won't come out again, I don't believe, this biennium. So that one is done. And then earlier we did the bottle bill expansion, the proposed expansion on that. And that one we did vote, and we did have enough to sustain the governor's veto. So, on occasion, I don't want to look on them like victories, but on occasion we feel that we're able to at least put a hand up and say, no, that's not really a good policy decision, and we agree with the governor, and so that's how it goes. So with that in mind, I just want to pass along, and I'm sure people have heard all of the discussion this year about taxes and how they're probably going to go up. Some of the major tax and fee bills that are still in play account for nearly $140 million, not counting the impending property tax hike. And again, we're recording this on the 14th, so some of this may already have happened by the time the audience hears this on the 21st. I know there are some revotes on school budgets. I don't know if they come this week or not, this coming week ahead, but we had over 30 of them rejected in the first round, if you will. And I know there were at least 4 that where the school boards took the information back in and came up with another budget, and 4 of those were rejected a second time, including, I think, Fairhaven and Castleton. And yes. There was also St. Johnsbury, I believe, South Burlington, the Westford School District, and there was one more. So 4 of those have. Some of them did pass. I shouldn't make it all one way. But there will be property tax hikes, I think, in, I don't know if every community or the great majority of them. And then the one that's coming up July 1st, the payroll tax. So that one hasn't been counted in this $140 million figure that I'm mentioning. That one will go into effect, I think, July 1st, the next fiscal year. And that one we passed last year to fund the child care situation. So I thought Representative Scott Beck put it pretty well. He is a rep from St. Johnsbury, and he said in the last 10 years, personal income tax receipts in the state of Vermont have grown 54%. Sales tax receipts have grown 65%. and property taxes have increased by 53%. Corporate income tax has nearly tripled in the last 10 years. And in other words, he said, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And there are a number of bills. Some of them have come out of Bill's committee. And I don't know where they are. I don't know what is going to happen to these as we move further along. We could talk about any one of them if you want, Bill, and you can let us know how things went in the committee. So there's 12 of you, and your job is to find the revenue, right?
Well, yes. So taxes and fees.
Okay. Yeah.
And don't forget, there's also surcharges that can come into play as well.
So one of them is H721, and this expands Medicaid. It increases the top corporate level from 8.5% to 10%, which will be the highest in the nation. It increases security registration fees. It expands corporate tax base through a taxation of Subpart F income. All in all, it will raise about $39.2 million. Now, that was voted out of the House, but I assume that it's now or will be soon, depending on when you hear the show, in Senate Finance. It'll be up to them to decide whether to change that or whether to pass it through with no changes, and then it will come to the floor. I have a feeling, actually, I think it went to Senate Health and Welfare because it does have a Medicaid piece to it, and then it would probably have to go to appropriations later, I assume. What I heard this week, and I don't know whether this is going to be true or not, was that, and this is a very confusing year, at least for me, and I've only been doing this 10 years, and I feel sometimes like I don't know anything about anything up there. Normally what happens, the budget would include appropriations, which would include taxes, fee changes, and all that other kind of stuff. This year, it doesn't go that way. The budget itself, which came out of the House, is about 4%, 4.5% higher than last year. The governor's recommended budget was, I think, 3.65, something like that, somewhere between 3.5% and 4% increase. So the two of them were pretty much in line. It still spent more money than the governor wanted, but at least it wasn't double or triple. But all the other bills that have the money attached are still sort of hanging out there somewhere, and I don't know how in the end that's going to work.
Well, there were 3 bills, I think, that we passed outside of the budget. I think the budget currently stands at, I don't know, it's almost $8.6 billion. Yeah. And you're correct in saying that most spending, the spending would be included in the budget because it's going to be included come July 1 if these bills pass. But you're looking at $130 to $140 million additional tax revenue, tax and fee revenue that we're looking for to fund programs like increasing Medicaid, which the Medicaid bill reform. They want to reform Medicaid, and currently our federal poverty level percentage is in line with 39 other states. There are 10 states that are actually lower than what we provide. So we are pretty much with the pack. If this bill passed out of the House, which makes the state of Vermont the highest in the country for Medicaid. Additionally, it funded housing, a little bit of housing, but also a big piece was the people experiencing homelessness housing to the tune of $47 million of that money.
Right.
So all of that money is not in the budget. And which is highly unusual this year.
And if it moves over to the Senate side, at least there's been an indication from the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee that they're going to stay on the wall and they won't be taken up. And in essence, they'll die there, and all those programs that are contained in that bill, because there won't be any money to fund them, will also go away. The other big one to me was H829, which increases the property transfer tax and adds that new top marginal rate of 11.75%. That was probably the biggest one. That was going to raise $92.4 million, and it did pass the House. So if you add up the Medicaid one and the housing one, you're already over $100 million in new taxes and fees. So there's also one, 687, which has to do with the Act 250 process. And I'm not sure if there's any actual fee or taxes in that. That did pass in the House, and it's now in the Senate Natural Resources Committee. So there's much to do with about 4 weeks left as we record this on the 14th. You're going to hear it on the 21st, so there'll be 3 weeks left. If indeed we're going to get out May 10th, and I assume we are, I haven't heard anything that would indicate we're going to have to go longer than that. But
yeah.
The yield bill hasn't come out yet either, right? And so that's another one that's going to have to get passed, or we really literally can't go. We'll have to stay.
And I think Bill can really expound more on those three bills that you just mentioned, 829, 687, and 721, had a package of taxes in it, the corporate, the personal, and the property transfer. So you can probably explain those a little better.
Sure.
We hope you can.
Yeah. Well, the corporate, as you said, Brian, that's going to raise Vermont to the highest in the nation at 10%. We gave good argument as to why we shouldn't do it, but the need of the revenue is leading the charge here.
Right.
So, what was the other?
Personal income tax. 3% over, I believe you
500,000.
Over 500,000.
Yeah. That's not in play yet, as I recall. That is in play.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yes, that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the other tax the rich bill, which is the
wealth tax.
The wealth tax, assets over $10 million, and that's in a study.
Okay.
So that's part of the miscellaneous tax bill.
And then the other one is the transfer tax that buyers of real estate pay. And
yeah, and that increases. They changed it. We changed it by amendment to if you sell a home over $700,000 in value, you're going to pay more in your property transfer tax. But it also at the same time protects those that sell lesser value homes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's $750 actually, but I could be wrong.
It was $600,000 when it passed out, but they found out that Chittenden County 90% of their homes sell for over.
Well, that's the thing, because maybe 15, 20 years ago, if you said $600,000, that's a lot of money for a house. But as real estate values kept moving up and up and up, it really isn't out of the picture for a lot of people. So I think it was wise to go to $750. And you'll get a little bit of a nick if you buy a property that's over $750. So the argument is, and I want to make sure that we cover both sides of the argument here, that the so-called more fortunate folks in our state should be able to shoulder more of the tax burden, or in other words, the rich should pay their quote fair share. I understand that, and to some degree, I guess I agree with it. The other side of that, though, is, and you can have arguments all day long about the so-called tax flight, where if people are nicked to a certain degree, they are very mobile and they don't have to live here if they don't want to, and they can move to another state with a bit more favorable tax situation. And the problem with that is I'm trying to remember the figures here, I want to say it's about 1.1% of the entire state makes more than $500,000 a year. It's somewhere in that it's not quite 2%. But when you translate into the tax revenue situation, that's 30% of what we gain in taxes from that 1.1% group of people. So if even a few of them left, the foregone revenue from them leaving would have to be absorbed by everybody that's still here. So that's my counter argument to this. And they'll say, well, we've done studies and there's no absolute proof that anybody ever has left because of a higher tax situation. But I know people that have. So I don't know that it's a lot of people, because I think most people enjoy living here. It's a great state to be in, but I think there are some people that did. And each one that leaves means we don't have that revenue anymore, and someone else is going to have to step up and pay for it. So these are all important programs, I'm sure, to most people that they fund. But without the money, I just don't know what's going to happen. The other thing that scares me with respect to the school situation, as I understand it, if by FY25, July 1st, we don't have a school budget in place in a particular community, it reverts back to the year before budget, which, no, is that not true?
They can only spend up to 87% of the prior year's budget. So if it's not in play by July 1, they would be allowed to spend FY24's budget 87% of it.
Okay.
And
but that probably would mean some layoffs.
Budget. Yes.
And they would have to borrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So as you can see, this gets pretty complicated when we get down into the weeds about, which tax bills and fee bills and other stuff that's coming up. I know one of them, I did vote for one of them that came over because it was an S bill, S-181, the streaming tax. This imposes a new tax equal to 5% of a provider's gross revenue. This will raise about $7 million. And the reason I did was the PEG TV folks back here in Rutland were very strongly in favor of that. What's happened to them, unfortunately, fewer people are using cable television services, and they used to get from that universal service fee a little piece of that every month. I don't know, $4 or $5 I think was on my bill. And they didn't get all of that, but they got part of it. And so as more people are taking advantage of new platforms on which to provide their visual entertainment, the Hulas and the whatever else you can do.
Hulu.
What is it? Hulu? Whatever it is.
Netflix.
Yeah, those things. Then PEG TV folks were not able to get that revenue. So they were constantly going the wrong way in terms of revenue. So I did support that. I did vote for that. There was a tough one, but I did vote for that. I'm very appreciative of what our local PEG TV does. I think they provide tremendous service, and so I voted for it, and hopefully that one will go through and keep our PEG TV folks going. So,
have you dealt with that yet?
Yes.
In yours?
Yes, and currently they get, I think it's 2.5% from the Universal Service Fund. But in the last few years, with cable declining, more people not subscribing to cable, they've had to have transfers from the general fund to keep them afloat.
Okay.
That's why this move is necessary.
Yeah. We're talking to Bill Canfield and Pattie McCoy, both members of the House in the state of Vermont. And we will take a break and come right back here on Catamount Community Connection. We're back on Catamount Community Connection, and our show brought to you as it is each week by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. We're looking forward already to the 178th Fair, August 13 through 17. And our guest today, Pattie McCoy from Poultney, who is the minority leader in the House, and Bill Canfield, who is the rep from Fairhaven, and is on the Ways and Means Committee in the Vermont House. So we've talked a little bit about some of the proposed tax increases and fees. If you can, Bill, kind of explain the yield bill to us, that would be helpful, I think, because we are going to be wrapped up in that in terms of the property tax situation with the school budgets. How do we establish a yield? What does it do and all that kind of stuff?
Well, the yield bill, usually we wait until we get the approved school budgets,
right?
Voter approved. The information from them comes to the Agency of Education, and they bring it to the Ways and Means Committee. And the yield helps establish the local tax rate for education.
Okay.
This is before the CLA comes into play.
Correct.
Yeah.
The CLA is the common level of appraisal, which, again, this is all wrapped up in stuff that and I've often said this, I think there's 3 people in the state of Vermont can really explain how we fund education in the state, and I'm not one of them. But the yield does come into play, and so does the CLA. And as housing prices rise, you have to stay within a certain amount. I think it's 5% either one way or the other of what your value is. And if it isn't, then you have to go through an appraisal. And that's when people really get nervous about the price of housing. So you haven't been able to take that up yet because you don't have. How many do you need? Every last school board budget to have passed before you can do that?
No, there are some that actually vote later every year, just a few. But this year, especially with at H850 that we passed, which allowed districts to suspend or postpone their vote and replan it, and we gave them till April 15th. So here we are on the 13th. 14th.
14th,
excuse me. So we've been working on the ed bill, and we're going with projections from the Agency of Ed on the through Joint Fiscal Office on where the budgets likely will be. So we're going to meet tomorrow on Zoom, the Ways and Means Committee, and we're going to vote this out Tuesday.
Wow.
So if I can go into this a little bit.
Yep.
We talked about making changes to the CLA, possibly to adjust it. We talked about several things to change the education system because John Q. Public has had enough of throwing money at the situation, not addressing the problem. So last week we only saw this bill for the first time on Tuesday, and come Thursday afternoon we are now going to, Scott Beck would say, we're going to punt. So this is a disheartening situation, but we're going to have Section 7 will be an Education Opportunity Payment Task Force. And they're going to look at all these possible changes for the future. So that would take effect in fiscal year 26 and 7, and then go beyond. This task force will have the Secretary of Education or designee, a Commissioner of Taxes or designee, 3 current members of the House appointed by the Speaker, not from the same party, 2 current senators, same thing, not from the same party, but appointed by the Committee on Committees, one person, the Executive Director or designee of the Vermont School Board Association, one from the Vermont Principals Association, one from the Superintendents Association, one from the Vermont NEA, one from VASBO, Vermont Association of School Business Officials, and one from the Vermont Independent Schools Association. And so we were careful to not have a majority of legislators involved, but there's 6 here that are from these associations, and we got to hope that these folks are in the mind to change things because John Q. Public does not want the status quo.
Right.
It's time for a change, and hopefully we're going to address it soon. But that leaves this year, we're going to raise taxes, and, we're throwing more money at it.
Yeah.
So the proposal now, Patty, is 1.5% on the short-term rentals.
Okay.
Yeah, and the cloud tax. So there's $20 million in the cloud tax, and I don't have on the top of my head what that 1.5 from. Yes, I do. $6.5 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 26, 28 million. Something like that. And that's in essence going to buy down the property tax rate to some degree.
Well, the rule of thumb is $10 million will get you 1%. So. I think right now the projection is 17 point something. So this is don't forget, this hasn't passed yet.
Yeah.
So this will get us under 15.
That's still in some people's view, a hefty raise.
Definitely.
It's going to affect people's property taxes. There's no way around that. And I have heard all kinds of different suggestions about how we, change what we're doing. whether we give schools grants, a specific grant, and I'm not sure that would not run afoul of the constitutional or the Supreme Court decision way back when, which created Act 60 to start with. It may or may not, I don't know. But then what would be left from your per pupil spending would be at the local level. People would vote yes or no. Again, the more wealthy communities could afford more money to be spent on their particular school. So I think that might run afoul of the Supreme Court decision. That's one way to do it. I know we also talked about doing away with the property tax and just going strictly with income. But again, you've got disparity all the way through the state in terms of if you live in a community where the average salary is, $100,000, that's a lot different than someone that makes $60,000. So I don't know what the answer is, but we've got to come up with something that will change it and make it, I think, a little bit more equitable. So we've talked a little bit about, and there were three things that I wanted to bring up: Act 250 reform, the housing situation, and then public safety. We have made some progress, I will say, with the public safety piece of that. I think Representative Burdick was responsible, or at least partially responsible, for a bill which just passed the Senate a couple of weeks ago now. And and I didn't realize this before, but up until then, and the governor hasn't signed it yet either, if someone literally broke into your car and was in there rummaging around and looking for stuff, that wasn't a crime before. Now it will be with the bill that just passed, and so that will hopefully take care of some of that. But there was also a couple other bills that came across from, I think, House Judiciary and one on the Senate side that I sponsored that will force the judicial person, the judge, to take a look at past history of whoever it is that the defendant. And if there's a pattern of continued retail theft or whatever, that can be taken, that will be taken into consideration in terms of imposing conditions of release. So I think we're at least attempting to correct that a little bit. But that was a big issue in the campaign that I heard about when we ran last time. The housing and the Act 250 piece are so interconnected that you can't really talk about one without the other. And to date, at least, again, we're recording this on the 14th, we have not passed one single housing bill yet. And the Act 250 bill that came out of the House, in my view, makes it worse. So I don't know that we've made much progress there, but to me, until you really take a look at the regulatory process for building a house or building a development and fix it, we haven't done anything with housing.
We really haven't. There were hopes at the beginning of the session that there was H719 that came out. It was tripartisan bill that came out that really had a lot of great things in it for housing. And I think that bill did not go to our General and Housing Committee. It went to Environment and Energy and came out. And I think it's still sitting on the wall. In place of that is 687, which strictly deals with Act 250, which currently I think 65 to 70% of the state falls under Act 250. 687 is like 98% of the state will now have to fall under Act 250. And it hurts rural communities, those who do not have a downtown, those who do not have zoning, and which is pretty much the majority of rural communities in this state. So I do know that the Senate bill, there was a Senate bill 311
right,
that was also kind of a bipartisan view as well, and you may be able to speak on that one, Brian. I think that was comparable to our H719.
It was, and it's still in Senate Economic Development, which is where it began. The process there, I guess, is the plan from leadership is to take the 787?
687.
687, and somehow combine it with 311 and the other bill so that you're probably going to wind up with a 200 or 300-page bill that will hopefully address some of the issues involved. And I hear what you're saying, Patty, about the the fact that, the designated downtown areas make out very well under one of those bills. So when I had Mike Dunches, the mayor of the city of Rutland, in last week, he was in favor of it because it does help the city of Rutland. And really, in many ways, that's what he's supposed to really focus his attention on, is just the city. He has a little wider focus than that, of course, with, the county that surrounds the city. But it does help some people, but it hurts other people. So to me, that's not an ideal situation. You've got to find a little bit better compromise, I think, in terms of allowing some development to happen without going through a very costly and unpredictable and not very timely process. And we haven't done it yet. We just have not done it yet.
No, they also changed the board, the Natural Resources Board, so that when you apply for an Act 250 permit, I believe it will go to the board now. And if you appeal it, it does not go to environmental court. It goes back to the same board that denied you, which I absolutely disagree with. I mean, if you have ever gone through a grievance process on your property tax bill, after the Board of Civil Authority, your local body, hears it and issues an opinion, issues a quasi-judicial opinion, you have a choice of either going to the state property valuation and review individual or to the Superior Court.
Yeah.
This does not give them an option. They have to. I think they have to go to the board, and then they can go to the Supreme Court. I believe, which is a huge expense.
Sure, it is,
and a lot of time.
Yep.
Involved.
And
so that was the other issue with 687 as well.
Yeah. So again, hopefully before the next 3 weeks pass, we will at least come up with some help for those who are really waiting. There are developers that are waiting to go and have pretty much shovel-ready projects in the works, but they haven't got permits yet. And I think that's important. If we really all believe, and I keep hearing it from everybody, gee, we got to do something about housing. Housing is so important. Then we need to get this other piece done, this regulatory piece that seems to be holding everything up. I will compliment Stephen Box, who's a local developer here, who managed to get, I think it's 13 or 14 units for veterans up at what used to be Mr. C's here in the city on North Main Street. He did a great job, and I think he's pretty well full. And we were at the ribbon cutting, if you will, or the grand opening, and the vets were there, and they were happy, and they got a place to live. So, little things like that happen a lot, but we really need to take a bigger picture here.
Yeah, there's a program that's called VHIP, Vermont Housing Improvement Program, which has done phenomenally well since 2020. I believe they've rehabbed 535 units, and they have another, don't quote me on these, but 353 additional units in the process. So in 4 years to get almost 900 units up, that alleviates a lot of the problems that we see. Unfortunately, the governor did put an additional $6 million in his budget, which was slashed to $1 million when it went through our House Appropriations Committee. And my understanding is currently there are $22 million worth of applications for VHIP, and we have, I think there's $18 million on their balance sheet right now. So even if we give them that $1 million, we're not going to be able to fund what a very a program that seems to be a success, and we're not funding it to the level that we should be.
So we talked a little bit about the public safety issue. I think there's some good work being done by both chambers on that, and I think you'll see some different decisions made at the judicial level, at least I hope so. And we started to talk about the housing and the Act 250 and the kind of intersection between those two. And hopefully before we're through on May 10th, if that is indeed the date of adjournment, we will have passed something that will help. I think that's probably going to happen. I hope it will anyway. The other situation, at least if you are from Rutland County, that keeps coming up and coming up and coming up is the way that we address the homeless situation. And I don't think we've got a very good program in place. I don't think that's the solution that we all have wanted to see for so long. It was one thing back in the COVID days, hard to imagine that was only 4 years ago, where we had plenty of federal money. And I understand how the federal money is on one pocket or in one pocket and the state is in the other. So it's still all our money. It's still our tax money that's being used. But we were able, at least with some federal help, to begin a program to address what we unfortunately see as an increasing number of people that don't have a home. They don't have any place to go. And we talk a lot about, and I did talk about this with the mayor last week, and it's all sort of street rumor. I don't have any data to support this, but we hear all the time about people that are literally just moving here to take advantage of the situation, and they're not, native Vermonters. They're not folks that grew up here and went to high school here and whatever. I don't know how many of those there are, but I do know that the number has gone up to, I think it's 2,500 at one level, or at one point in time, the whole state now. The whole state had 2,500 that we were giving general assistance to. Unfortunately, the great majority of that happens to be in Rutland because of the hotel situation. We have 3 of them that are operated in essence by the same family. We hear, and I don't, again, know that this is true, so I want to caution folks about that, but we hear that there's one more coming. There's a motel if you're heading up the mountain on the left-hand side, right after Journey's End, and that new federal building, that they're rehabbing a motel that's been vacant for a long time, and that will become another potential place for folks without a home to live. So, it takes us from, I think right now, about 75% of the burden of the load to somewhere near 80%. And that's just not fair, and it's not sustainable, and we have to figure out a better way to do it. And I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I think there'll always be people who need help. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Single moms, folks with disabilities, homeless vets. And we should absolutely reach out and help those people and make sure that they get the services they need and a safe, warm, safe place to live. But at the same time, I have to think that there's some folks who are able-bodied and younger and able to help out that aren't because they see at least the potential to move and to be taken care of here. I don't know how else to put it. I realize that may sound kind of cruel to people, but I think people are pretty well fed up with the situation as it stands now. The federal money that I started talking about earlier, that's gone. We spent that in the first 2 years, and it was hundreds of millions of dollars that was spent. And then it fell to the state. And so the only way to continue at that level was to increase taxes because there's no other way to do it. And that's pretty much what we've done. I don't know what the number is right now. I don't think it's 2,500. And we've gone through certain dates where it was supposed to end, and then it was extended, and it was supposed to end. No, we're going to have to extend it again. So the current date, I think, is, I want to say it's April 30th. But I could be wrong. Yeah,
I believe it's April 30th as well. But what ends, general assistance housing is not ending for
Correct.
Those individuals that you have spoken about. What's ending is the hotel voucher program that anybody can, go into a hotel and get a hotel room. But the hotel voucher program itself will still continue for weather-related issues. When it's a certain temperature out, you still can use the hotel voucher program. So and I don't know what that figure is on those individuals. That might be the ones that for general assistance might be around 1,400.
Okay.
Or it may be less now. So.
Yeah, I think the idea is to go back to pre-COVID,
Yes.
the way that we handled the folks that needed housing.
We're talking to Pattie McCoy, who's the House Minority Leader and also on the Transportation Committee in the House, and Bill Canfield, who is the Vice Chair of House Ways and Means and a longtime 20-year veteran of the House. And we will be back after our final break here on Catamount Community Connection. We're back on Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, and we're joined today with a couple of my friends, Pattie McCoy and Bill Canfield, who are members of the House of Representatives. Our show brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. And I don't know who's coming this year to the fair. We'll have to get a hold of Robert Congdon somewhere down the line here. But the 178th fair is happening. I know that August 13 through 17, 2024. And we'll have him on a little bit closer. I know they haven't signed any contracts with any, I assume it'll be country stars coming to the fair, but I always look forward to that. It's fun to just head on down and go through the agriculture portion of the fair if you like. I love the maple candy. I won't say I don't buy a lot of that while it's there and then kind of hoard it for...
The racing pigs.
Yeah, the racing pigs, yeah. So all that's coming up. One of the things that I did bring up last week with Mayor Dunches was the potential of, and I call it a safe injection site. I know they have another term for it now, which I don't know what it is, but I understand that the bill, the title of the bill was changed as it left the House to something else. But it's a place where people would be able to go and use drugs, illegal drugs, I should say. And the mayor was pretty clear last week. He did not support that happening in Rutland. And there is, from what I understand, I don't know if it's an opt-out or an opt-in. I think it's an opt-in, so that you won't be able to do that unless you opt into the program. And I don't think necessarily that the Rutland site has been selected at all. Not that I've heard, but potentially, if the city was to opt in, that could happen. I think obviously there's, to me, a whole host of problems with that, but and there have been varying results with that. New York, I think, has tried it, and I don't know if it's still going on down there or not. I haven't really paid much attention to that bill.
So we've passed the bill, which would be the first in the nation to be a government-sanctioned safe injection site. The two sites that are currently happening, in New York City, are privately funded.
Okay.
They are not funded by the municipality of New York City. So that's the first thing. No one else in the country has this yet. Secondly, the logistics of it, I don't know much about, drugs, but my understanding is that someone who has to make themselves available to a safe injection site or visit it would have to do so several times a day. It's not just something that you would go in once a day, too. So whatever that 6 to 8 block radius that you live in, maybe you could possibly, but anybody else outside of that becomes more difficult. Additionally, I believe we have to provide, there's 3 or 4, like there's a doctor, a nurse, there's several individuals that we provide for that safe injection site. I think the fee we heard, the tax total was $2 million for 2 sites in the state. So that's the other issue with that. Additionally, they're coming in with their own illegal drugs. We are not supplying them with them. So we don't know if they OD there, what they're using. Will Narcan work? Will, something else work? So, there's a lot of issues in providing this as a state.
I'm wondering if you're on your way and you have whatever your drug of choice is, either in your vehicle or on your person, and you get stopped by law enforcement, and they say, well, I'm on my way to the injection site. Does that, in essence, let them off the hook, or does it? I have no idea how that works.
I don't either. I have no idea.
Okay. Did any specific site get selected yet? Do you know?
The 2 that I've heard is Burlington and Brattleboro, but no sites have been selected.
Okay. Well, again, I talked to the mayor about it last week, and he was not in favor of it for Rutland. I don't know whether he's in favor of it as a general idea, but he said clearly that Rutland would not necessarily be a great choice. We we just mentioned the homeless situation. We've got our own problems to deal with here, and I don't think we necessarily need to add to them, but that's just me. And it's in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee as we speak on the 14th. I don't know by the time you hear this on the 21st whether it will have been passed out of that committee and hit the Senate floor or not. And I shouldn't presuppose any vote, but I will predict that it will be out 3-2. In other words, 3 members of the committee in favor and 2 of them against. I think you'll find both Rutland County Senator Terry Williams and Rutland County Senator Dave Weeks will be voting against the safe injection bill, and the other 3 members will be voting for it. And with a 3-2 vote, it would get to advance and move to the Senate floor. I don't know. I haven't talked to the governor directly about that particular one. My inclination would be that he wouldn't favor it, but whether he would feel strongly enough to veto it or not, I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see. We should mention also that we do have a veto session already scheduled for the 17th and 18th, I think, of June. Whether it'll take 2 days or longer, I don't know. Because right now, there's no veto right now in place, I don't think, on anything. He had S18 as a veto, but that's been kind of solved the other way by just sending it back to committee. And the other one, the bottle bill, was already sustained. So at the moment, again, as we record this, there aren't any vetoes to deal with, but my guess was there might be as many as 5 or 6. I think there's a poll or a pool going around in the General Assembly about how many bills he'll veto. I chose not to take part in that, but there are people that are betting one way or the other. So I don't know, whether we're going to have 2 full days of veto session, or maybe we can get it all done as we did last year with 1 day, or maybe we don't have any. Maybe things come together in the last few hours and everything's okay. We've got the budget to approve or not approve, and we'll have to see how things go. So our time has come to an end, and I want to express my appreciation, as I always do, to folks for giving up their time to come in and talk with us. Representative Pattie McCoy from Poultney, who is the Transportation Committee member and also the minority leader in the House of Representatives, and State Rep Bill Canfield from Fairhaven, who is the vice chair of the House Ways and Means Committee and a 20-year veteran. And I could ask you both if you're running again, if you choose to give me an answer on that or not, or we can let it go. I'll let it go as far as that goes. And again, Rutland County has more Republican members of the House and the Senate than we do Democrats or progressives. So if someone's listening that feels like this is slanted way over one side, all I can do is ask you to get a hold of me. I would be glad to talk with Democratic members of the Rutland County delegation as well, and invite them in to hear their thoughts and how they see things going this year. It's just been sort of gone the other way because those are the way the numbers are in the county. But we'll have to wait and see whether I get an invitation from somebody to, hey, I'd like to come on that show. That'd be great. So that'll do it for this week. And again, our show brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society. And we will see you next week on Catamount Community Connection.